Hi, these comments are for MT. I am Michael from OTC, OnlineTOEFLCourse.com, and you're one of my 30-day TOEFL writing bootcamp course students, and you could be one of the hardest working students I've ever had. Probably top 5. Okay, so let's take a look at the rubrics. So you're doing the integrated speaking. I think on this one, the main problem is I don't think you included enough information about the reading passage. You included a lot of information about the listening, right? So I'm going to put you in the 3 range, high 3. It says, although the overall response is oriented to the task, it conveys only vague, global, unclear, or somewhat imprecise connection of the points made in the lecture to the points made in the reading. It's very clear what the professor is saying in the lecture. I get that in the writing, right? But it's not as clear what was said in the reading passage. That's what you need to develop a little bit more. That's what I would say there. So I'm going to put you at 24 points out of 30. I think just a very, very slight change in the structure of your body paragraphs will easily put you at 29 to 30 points. Easily. I really believe that. Okay, so let's take a look at what you wrote first. And what I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and read the whole thing, and I'll make some grammatical corrections. And then the second time, I will add a little bit of information in each body paragraph about the reading passage. So you say the reading passage states that social networks are creating a more repressed society by blocking face-to-face communication, creating a false sense of friendship, and causing many addictions. Whereas the professor in the listening passage disagrees with, I'm going to change this to maybe these assertions. Now, the main thing is, once you've said that, you'll say first, the reading passage claims that social media is preventing face-to-face communication. That would be the topic sentence you're going to say here. Maybe have just maybe 2 lines about the reading. Okay, so you say firstly, the professor explains that social networks do not prevent people from face-to-face interactions. Instead, you want to put either a semicolon or a period here, so you do not have what's called a comma splice. Go to Google. What is a comma splice? That's what it is right there. Instead, they're just replacing the past handwritten letters. To illustrate, the professor gives an example that in the past, people, I'm going to put not that, but how. And I don't even think you have to say how. Just say use past tense verbs there. An example of how people such as soldiers and presidents also wrote letters for communication purposes. Therefore, as per the professor, social networks such as Facebook and Twitter you just say similar to writing letters, but in an instant way for message delivery among towns, cities, or even countries throughout the world. Good. But notice you didn't really say anything about the reading passage there. So we have to understand how the lecture relates to the information in the reading. Secondly, the professor is against the point of view, as per the reading passage, of negatively changing the definition of friendship because 2 people do not necessarily have to meet. I'm going to put meet to build, not for build. To build their friendship. An example is given by the professor regarding the pen pal system when he was younger. You have that. I'm changing this to in which, not that. I think you want to say when he was younger, in which 2 people wrote letters to each other. They wrote, and you want to make this past tense, and built their friendship without meeting. Hence, the professor thinks that the friends or followers in the social networks are the same to the pen pals. Finally, the professor disagrees with the reading passage about social media causing the problem of addiction to people, and as much as he thinks that addiction can be called routine and social networks are becoming a social norm of the modern society. You have some grammatical issues here. The professor disagrees with the reading passage about social media. I don't think, because you have a preposition, you can't use a verb here. About social medias. How about social media causing the problem of addiction to people? In as much as he thinks that addiction can be called routine and social networks are becoming a social norm of the modern American society. For example, as per the professor, the parents, the teenagers, and even the politicians are using the social networks to make new friends. You see, this, as per the professor, you don't know how to, this is not working very well. Let me show you a trick here. Yeah, you need a little bit better what I call voice markers. So let's put the voice markers somewhere else. For example, the parents, teenagers, even the politicians this is a little bit less awkward here. How about this? You can put it right here also. Asserts the professor are using social media networks to make new friends, not to make new friends. On the other hand, if a person does not use social networks, he can be considered as repressed. I'm going to put in that he is refusing it to get harmonized into the modern lives with new advanced technologies. So, yeah, I think that you might even score a little lower than what you have. I actually made some grammatical corrections. I didn't think I was going to make many corrections, but I did make a few, right? And I think you can do a little bit better with. So I'm going to put you at 3.5 out of 5, 22 points out of 30. And I think you had some problems with your connecting words and some problems with integrating the voice markers into your own sentences. And then you could develop, I think, the information from the reading a little bit better. And that's what I want to show you now. So let's go through each paragraph, and I'm going to add maybe 2 or 3 lines in the beginning of those paragraphs. In the first body paragraph, I'm going to add this beginning here. If you noticed, this kind of goes with your topic sentence, right? Or your thesis. Social networks are blocking face-to-face communication, right? So what did I do? Social networks are replacing the critically important human interaction. So I state that idea that you've already stated in your thesis. You also say creating a false sense of friendship. In the next paragraph, I have social media networks, claims the author, create false friendships. And then the third point in your thesis is causing many addictions. And then I state that when I get to the third body paragraph, many social networks are becoming addicted, many people, right? So let's take a look at the changes I made. So in the first body paragraph, firstly, according to the reading passage, social networks are replacing the critically important human interaction, which is expressed through talk, gestures, and having coffee breaks. All right, now how about, no, I want to say talk and then gestures, sorry. And just put coffee breaks. There we go. However, the professor explains that social networks do not prevent people from face-to-face interactions. Instead, they are just replacing the past handwritten letters. They're replacing the, let's say, the custom of writing. So they're just replacing the custom of writing handwritten letters. How about a common form of communication? You might say that. To illustrate, the professor gives an example. To illustrate, the professor explains, we don't have to say all this. When you say illustrate, it is an example. To illustrate, the professor explains that people, such as soldiers, also wrote letters for communication purposes. Therefore, the professor, how about use a noun clause? Explains. That's a little bit smoother there. The professor explains that social networks such as Facebook and Twitter are similar to writing letters, but in an instant, but I'm going to put but as an instant way for message delivery among towns, cities, or even countries throughout the world. So we have that. Then we have this one. Secondly, social media networks, claims the author in the reading passage. Notice my voice marker here. This is where you can improve on your voice markers. Create false friendships, since this type of human bonding is defined as looking at pictures, reading status updates, and posting messages, thereby changing the meaning of friendship negatively. Conversely, friendship conversely, two people do not necessarily have to meet to build their friendship. And then we'll put the voice marker right at the end here. Argues, or the speaker. An example is given by the professor regarding the pen-pal system. An example is given by the professor regarding the pen-pal system. When he was younger, in which maybe it might be better to put the period here, and then you have a new sentence. When he was younger, then we can just say this. When he was younger, two people wrote letters to each other and built their friendship without meeting. Hence, the professor thinks that the friends or followers in social media are similar people made friends using the Hence, a professor thinks that the friends or followers on the social media networks are similar to how people made friends using the pen-pal system. Okay, that's probably good enough there. Then the last one, finally, many people using social networks are becoming addicted, claims the author in the reading passage. According to the author, social network users can become obsessed, making status updates and posting pictures, even spending majority of their time daily engaging in these solitary activities. In contrast, does not believe that we can put this, that social media cause, or how about contribute in contrast, a professor does not believe that social media contribute to the problem of addiction. Inasmuch as he thinks that addiction can be called routine. Maybe put the cause effect or because or since social networks are becoming our social norm, put of modern American society. For example, the parents, teenagers, even the politicians, asserts the professor, maybe use the social networks to make new friends. On the other hand, if a person does not use social networks, how about instead of that, put in fact? If a person does not use social networks, how about contends the speaker, he can be considered as repressed in that he's refusing to get harmonized into the modern lives with new advanced technologies. Good. So we have it. Okay, there we go. So those would be the changes that I would make. So I think you did have some problems with your grammar and your word choice slightly, and you didn't really include enough information about the reading passage so we can see how the lecture is casting doubt on that. And what I did is I'm using kind of what's called a chunking compare and contrast organization, which means I'm including some information about the reading in the beginning, and then right after that, I show how the lecture casts doubt on that information. Notice each time at the key juncture after the reading, I use a transition word. However, in this paragraph, in the next paragraph, I use a word like conversely to show that opposite or that contrast. And finally, I use the word in contrast here to show that differing relationship there. Okay, so maybe one more time. Let's read it one more time. We can kind of get the whole thing. And then I'm going to go into my website. I'm going to recommend some lessons I think you can take a look at. So the reading passage states that social networks are creating a more repressed American society by blocking face-to-face communications, creating a false sense of friendship, and causing many addictions. Whereas the professor in the listening passage disagrees with these assertions. And I'm going to get rid of this. If you put whereas, you're now making the listening passage a subordinate type idea. You're making it a support point, which I don't think you should do here. So it's probably better to say something like this. However, or you can say but. The professor in the listening passage disagrees with these assertions. Firstly, secondly, and then finally, go. I was just checking your transition words. According to the reading passage, social networks are replacing the critically important human interaction, which is expressed through talk, gestures, and coffee breaks. However, the professor explains that social networks do not prevent people from face-to-face interactions. Instead, they are just replacing the custom of writing handwritten letters, a common form of communication in the past. To illustrate, the professor explains that people, such as soldiers and presidents, also wrote letters for communication purposes. Therefore, the professor explains that social networks such as Facebook and Twitter are similar to writing letters, but we can say here, but as an instant way for message delivery among towns, cities, or even countries throughout the world. Good. Secondly, Social media networks, claims the author in the reading passage, create false friendships since this type of human bonding is defined as looking at pictures, reading status updates, and posting messages, thereby changing the meaning of friendship negatively. Conversely, two people do not necessarily have to meet to build their friendship, argues the speaker. An example: no, we don't have to say all that either. How about this? For example, the professor explains that when he was younger, two people wrote letters to each other and built their friendship without meeting. Hence, the professor thinks that the friends or followers on the social networks are similar to how people made friends using the pen pal system. Finally, many people using social networks are becoming addicted, claims the author in the reading passage. According to the author, social network users can become obsessed making status updates and posting pictures, even spending majority of their time daily engaging in these solitary activities. In contrast, the professor does not believe that social media contribute to the problem of addiction, inasmuch as he thinks that addiction can be called routine since social networks are becoming our social norm of modern society. For example, the parents of teenagers, even the politicians, asserts a professor, use social networks to make new friends. In fact, if a person does not use social networks, contends the speaker, he can be considered as repressed and that he's refusing to get harmonized into the modern lives with new advanced technologies. And then you might say, in conclusion, clearly the reading passage is opposed by the points made in the lecture. Something like that you might end. Just something short, maybe 2 lines. I'm over at my online course, a 7-step system to pass the TOEFL IBT. And now let's take a look at what are some specific lessons that you can study that I think can improve your integrated writing right now, right? That's kind of what we want to take a look at right now. Okay, so we can kind of see it a little bit better here, right? So vocabulary, I don't really see any problems there. I think that you're in pretty good shape. Grammar, let me take a look, see if there's anything that pops out. I think overall you're pretty good with your grammar skills. I'm not going to worry too much about that. Let's go to the writing section. So after the independent, I have 40 independent writing practice tests. As you know, I have about 43 integrated writing practice tests. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, I want you to take a look at this particular lesson here. Lesson 9, TOEFL Integrated Writing Strategies. That's like a master lesson. I think take a look at that one. I think on this one, paraphrasing with voice markers. Yeah, you seem to have a little bit of trouble with that. So check out lesson 12.2 and then also lesson number 9, which is TOEFL Integrated Writing Strategies. I think those 2 lessons are important for you based on your writing abilities right now. Okay, and that's it. I'm not going to make a lot of recommendations on that. You have very strong writing skills. You're excellent with your syntactic variety. You know how to structure things. So what you noticed in my editing of what you wrote is I did add about a third of each of those paragraphs. I added some information about the reading passage. I think that's important. And then we can really see what the relationship is between the information in the lecture with the information in the reading. All right, and thank you for doing this writing practice test.